The St. Louis Cardinals make their living in the toughest division in pro football, the NFC East. Twice a year, St. Louis had to face opponents who compiled the best divisional record in the NFL. Teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, who confidently sought another NFC title. Down in Dallas, the Cowboys viewed the Cardinals as a mere stepping stone for an unprecedented 15th playoff appearance. Washington's new head coach, Joe Gibbs, threatened St. Louis with an aerial attack second to only the Pentagons, while a super rookie in New York transformed the Giants into a legitimate power. No one in the NFC faced more playoff-bound teams than St. Louis, but the Cardinals were not a team that would succumb to the rigors of their schedule. In their second year under coach Jim Hanifin, the youth-oriented Cardinals have developed an attitude that states that no matter what obstacles stood in their way, they were the makers of their own destiny. In 1981, St. Louis's destiny was to prove not only to themselves but to the rest of the NFL that they were a team on the rise and ready to challenge. The Mississippi riverboats were not the only thing picking up steam in St. Louis. A year ago, the Cardinals posted one of their most explosive years ever, and fans hope for an even greater display in the new season. In a Week 3 encounter with the Redskins, Big Red boosters got their wish.
Here is Hart back to throw. Play action pass. Hart wanting to throw deep, has Green open, hits him at the 20, to the 15, to the 10. Touchdown! Roy Green in behind Joe Lavender. Here is Connell getting the punt away. Mitchell comes up under it, takes it right at midfield. Here's Mitchell, dances to the 45, up the middle of the 40, 35, 30. Mitchell inside the 25, 20, 15, 10. He goes all the way, 50 yards on a punt return.
The Cardinals overwhelmed the Redskins with a 40-point barrage to record their first win of the season. But for most of the early part of 1981, it was not the best of times in St. Louis. The Cardinals lost 3 of their first 4 games, and injuries severely hampered the team's progress. Even when the team tried to rearrange its game plan, St. Louis could not shed the frustration of losing. Yet in defeat, these early games still had their moments of brilliance and achievement. In Tampa Bay, St. Louis held Doug Williams to nearly half of his passing average and prevented the Buccaneer touchdown specialist from finding the end zone. The reigning NFC Western Division champion Atlanta Falcons were baffled on finding a way to slow down all-purpose back Stump Mitchell, who gained 279 total yards. Even the Cowboys' fabled home winning streak was in jeopardy when rookie quarterback Neil Lomax dazzled Doomsday in his starting debut. But of all the noteworthy performances turned in by Cardinal players, one was truly a godsend. In storybook fashion, Roy Green was transformed from an ordinary second-string player into pro football's Superman. In his first 2 seasons, Green saw limited action from his strong safety position. But when the Cardinal receiving corps dwindled to just 2 healthy players, Green voluntarily crossed over to the other side of the line of scrimmage. When he ran his very first pass pattern, the team acquired their first 2-way player in more than 2 decades. And it was a decision St. Louis did not regret.
You can't put receiver and defensive back in the same room. It's 2 different things. So thus I really do have to possess that split personality. I really think it's to my advantage now because I know how those guys over there are thinking. And now I can walk up to the line and I look over there on the defensive side and I can kind of tell what defense they're in. So I know what adjustments to make, as far as my route is concerned. So really, when I make those transitions, they really don't have as good a shot on me. It's really surprising to me. At first, I thought that the physical part would be pretty tough on me, but really it hasn't been. After the games, I guess I'm so hyped up during the game that I really don't even think about being tired.
Roy is unusual in the respect he's not only the great athlete, he is so physical, he is so strong, He has so much endurance. I would imagine a track coach would look at him and say, there is my decathlon man.
Seemingly, each time an opposing team looked in another direction, Roy Green was there, ready to do battle. On defense, Green finished the season with the highest interception total of his career and became the first player in 24 years to catch a touchdown and intercept a pass in the same game. However, Green was even more valuable as a wide receiver, as his athletic versatility made him one of the game's most dynamic offensive threats. Green led Cardinal receivers in touchdown catches and surprised everyone by leading all NFC receivers with a 21.5-yard per reception average. Simply, there was no part of the game where Green failed to succeed.
There was a time when people were playing this game that they played both ways. And Roy's one of those guys, he can do that. He enjoys playing offensive football. He enjoys the living heck out of being a receiver. I think that he enjoys being on special teams. In fact, we have to pull him off some special teams to give him a break. Say, hey, you got to be tired. And he isn't tired.
Green's zeal for special teams play was shared by men like John Gillen, Willard Harrell, Jeff Griffin, Randy Love, Dave Steef, and punter Carl Birdsong, who recorded one of the best punting averages in Cardinal history and earned a spot on the NFL's all-rookie team. Statistically, this team of specialists were the NFC's finest unit and provided the Cardinals with superb field position all year. But when St. Louis had a rematch with the Cowboys at home, St. Louis had to tap all their resources in order to beat their arch-rival.
10-10 the score. Cardinals trying to get some momentum going here as Hart drops back to throw on first down, has some time throwing deep for Green in the end zone. Touchdown! Sensational catch by Roy Green! And you will not see a better catch than Green has just pulled out.
St. Louis always offers the Cowboys plenty of trouble. In their previous 5 home games against the Cowboys, St. Louis played Dallas close to the cup, but lost all 5 games by a total margin of 17 points. 1981 proved to be no different, as the two teams were tied late in the fourth quarter. Patiently, quarterback Jim Hart moved the Cardinals on a 10-play drive. And when St. Louis reached the shadows of the Cowboys' goalpost, kicker Neil O'Donohue put St. Louis's long-standing grudge to rest.
27 seconds on the clock, and they bring in Worley to hold for O'Donohue at the 27-yard line. O'Donohue's kick is up. It is long enough. It is good!
For the first time since 1977, St. Louis struck deep into the heart of Texas. When a player first encounters Jim Hanifin, he is immediately impressed by the Cardinal coach's spirit and dedication to the game. From the first whistle in summer camp to the final gun of the season, Hanifin is hard at work, making St. Louis a better team, and he expects nothing less from his players. Ideal examples of these dedicated players can be found on defense. Second-year defensive end Curtis Greer and linebacker Charles Baker, number 52, were the first and third players ever drafted by Hanifin's staff. Baker was the defense's most effective blitzing linebacker, while Greer's 12 sacks ranked him among the NFL's premier pass rushers. Dedicated work was also contributed by the offensive line, a unit composed of veterans Terry Steed, Dan Deerdorf, Joe Bostic, and center Tom Brahaney, who has not missed a game since coming into the league in 1973. Another important player in the Cardinal blocking scheme was number 24, Wayne Morris. Although Morris was the Cardinals' starting fullback and second leading rusher, he sacrificed personal statistics in lieu of bettering the team's ground attack as he threw lead blocks for trailing tailbacks. Also lending a supporting role in the backfield was rookie Stump Mitchell, number 30, who was used sparingly in the Cardinal running game but proved invaluable on St. Louis's return teams. During his senior year, Mitchell was the nation's second leading rusher behind George Rogers. But unlike last year's number 1 pick in the draft, the 5'8" Mitchell was selected in the 9th round. Yet the man who was built like a fireplug became the workhorse for Cardinal return teams as he handled an amazing 55 kickoff returns and established a new NFL record for combined kickoff and punt return yardage in a single season. But while Mitchell made his niche in the record books in just his first season, quarterback Jim Hart has been doing it for an entire career. In his 16th year, Hart stands as the game's greatest statistically active quarterback. In 1981, Hart became the 8th passer in league history to throw 200 career touchdowns and jumped into 3rd place on the all-time pass yardage list behind the legendary Fran Tarkenton and Johnny Unitas. Hart's favorite target was number 83, Pat Tilley, who improved on his 1980 MVP performance by snares for 1,040 yards. By recording his 4th consecutive 900-yard season, Tilley lent credence to the notion that he was the NFL's finest possession receiver. While most receivers have gained their notoriety by running fly patterns to the corners of the end zone, Tilley fearlessly challenged a defense over the middle, and with his quick moves and helpful blocks from his teammates, he turned numerous first downs into touchdowns. Tilley's dependability was mirrored by Mel Gray, who fought off nagging injuries and extended his streak of consecutive games with a reception to 117, just 10 shy of the NFL record. With a healthier Gray and starting tight end Doug Marsh, number 87, back in the lineup next season, the 1982 Cardinals' aerial attack promises to be more dangerous than ever. His name is Otis Jerome Anderson, and more than anything else, this man is a fighter. Whether it is dodging the jabs of a sideline sparring partner or running the ball up an opponent's gut, Anderson refuses to back down from a challenge and will come after you with everything he's got. O.J. set a team record for a running back by catching 51 passes and made countless defensive backs tremble with the thought of tackling him one-on-one. But such a fear was excusable, for there were times when an entire team had trouble bringing Anderson to his knees. In the second half of the season, there wasn't a runner in the NFL who outrushed O.J. For the 3rd time in his career, Anderson finished among the top 5 rushers, and in a November confrontation against the Bills, number 32 became the all-time Cardinal rushing leader. Only Houston's Earl Campbell has had a more prolific first 3 seasons than O.J. Anderson. It It has been often stated that the most important element on a young ball club is the growth of its defense. And in 1981, St. Louis made big strides on improving theirs. At the season's start, the Cardinal defense started 4 men with 3 or less years' experience and proved vulnerable. But strategic changes like abandoning a 3-4 defense in favor of 4 down linemen gave the Cardinals a more intimidating look. Perhaps St. Louis's biggest improvement on defense was the rapid progress of its number 1 draft choice, linebacker E.J. Jr., number 54. Junior's rugged style encouraged players like Calvin Favron, Eric Williams, Carl Allen, Roger Worley, Lee Nelson, and number 58 Dave Aarons to play more aggressively. And these men helped make the Cardinals one of the league's hardest-hitting teams. The rejuvenated Cardinal defense showed their might on the season's 8th week when the Minnesota Vikings came into St. Louis as football's hottest team, but left the River City with a considerably cooler outlook. St. Louis won 30-17, but critics scoffed at St. Louis's generosity for giving up points. So when the Cardinals faced the offensive-minded Buffalo Bills 3 weeks later, they responded with their first shutout since 1977. The Cardinals successfully penetrated the most secure offensive line in all of football and pressured quarterback Joe Ferguson to throw 6 interceptions. But even more important than St. Louis's defensive domination in the 24-0 win was the emergence of their quarterback of the future.
Lomax under center. Rainey snaps, and here's a pass play into the end zone. Caught by Mitchell, fakes the man and scores.
When Neil Lomax came to St. Louis, the heralded rookie was recognized as the most prolific passer in college history. But when he put on a Cardinal uniform, Lomax became a marked target for quarterback-hungry defenses who wanted to properly introduce number 15 to the NFL. A player of lesser character would have been intimidated by such a personal attack, but Lomax quickly learned to run out of the pocket and take matters into his own hands. Lomax set 90 collegiate records as a rollout passer, and whenever he was on the run, he was nearly impossible to defend. Against Baltimore, Lomax destroyed the Colt defense to give the Cardinals their second win in as many weeks. With Lomax providing the Cardinals with an additional scoring dimension, the rest of the offense opened up. At New England, several Lomax scrambles forced Patriot linebackers to remain near the line of scrimmage, which provided Otis Anderson enough room outside to rush for 130 yards. Lomax completed more than 70% of his passes, and every time the Patriots tied the Cardinals, Lomax directed St. Louis on another point-scoring drive. When New England tied the score with 3 minutes left in the game, Lomax directed St. Louis on a final comeback drive. And with just 23 seconds remaining, Lomax found Roy Green for the winning score. After the Cardinals had defeated their third AFC East team, they returned home in quest of their fourth consecutive victory. And once again, Lomax put the Cardinals on the winning track.
Third down and long. We'll call it 3rd and 17 for the Big Red. They have the 3 wide receivers in there, including Roy Green. And Lomax steps up into the pocket. He's on the run. He's to the 15, 10, 5, TD.
The Cardinals went on to beat the Saints 30-3 as St. Louis overpowered New Orleans in all phases of the game. Most appropriately, the crowning blow in the Cardinals' finest all-around game was delivered by the Big Reds' Mr. Everything.
Snap by Randy Clark. This goes to the short man, Roy Green. He might score. 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown!
By winning their 4th consecutive game, St. Louis completed 1981 with a great sense of pride and character. When St. Louis suffered an early season slump, most down-and-out teams would have just rode out the schedule. But the Cardinals held fast and recorded one of the strongest finishes in the NFL. The Cardinals posted a 7-9 record in 1981 and bettered their previous season's mark by 2 games. Next year promises even greater improvement as a developing defense and a more experienced offense will take aim at a winning record. If 1981 is any indication, the Cardinals will be a challenging force in 1982.